All right, good day. Hello, everyone. Thank you for investing your time with us today. This is Sam McClellan of safehighways.org and Travelers Marketing. Hey, how about that? We have some automatic slide changers here today with us, but we've been doing these calls for quite a while now. I think this is our 11th call. We've got some new people joining, and we have a new system, so we're going to walk through some of the housekeeping things today so we all know how to use our new system. Go ahead. So I think most everybody knows this is a call for SSP managers and supervisors, a place where we can share with one another best practices, ask questions, answer questions, get input from your peers. It's gone pretty well as we've progressed through this. Would love to get more interaction. So those of you out there, feel free. If you have a question, this is a great time to get some minds from around the country to help with it. We generally get about 18 states on average on this call. There's 40 states with patrol, so we've got quite a few more. If you know people that you think would benefit from being on these calls, please feel free to share the invites that you get. As long as they're DOT people, we want to pretty much keep it with Department of Transportation or toll road authorities. Basically, we just we've had some input that having third-party vendors and things on is probably something we're not ready for at this point. Although we do invite them from time to time, as we've done on this call, to present. There's also some FHWA administrators, division administrators on the call. It's fine. You can leave it here. The steering committee members that help Liz and I figure out what our topic should be and who we should get in touch with. You see their names up on the screen now. They've been doing this for about 1.5 years now. Jason Josie from Georgia and Todd List from Pennsylvania Turnpike. John McClellan from Minnesota is going to be our moderator today, so you'll hear plenty from John. We're lucky to have him. Thank you, John. Let's get into some of the housekeeping steps. Here's the agenda for today's call. We're obviously at the welcome and introduction part here. We take a few minutes to let everybody get online. We've got a special introduction here for us today. For those who have been on the call, you may see some different logos. The screen may look a little different. That's because we're now under the National Operations Center of Excellence. This group started out under FHWA's umbrella. Joey Segal from Maryland was at FHWA, and we worked with him, and we were able to use some of the powers of FHWA and their system to host these calls, and it worked pretty well for us. We're very happy to get launched that way. Came time, though, I'm going to let Nilo talk about the National Operations Center of Excellence, and I think you'll all see, as we've done, that it's a great fit for what we're trying to do here with this community, and we're happy to have that partnership now. Once we go through that, we'll get John McClellan to open up with us, and you can see our presenters here today. Of course, our topic is on expanding safety service patrols, knowing how to expand, when to expand, where to expand, and maybe how to get some funding for expansion. We'll take questions. Go ahead if you want to change the slide. We'll take questions in several different ways here, but certainly at the end of a presentation, if you have a burning question, we'll give you a few minutes there to ask, and then at the end, whatever time is left, we can go back. I think all of our presenters are going to be able to stay with us through the whole call today, which is great. One of the differences from past webinars we've held is the phone system is all of you are muted automatically when you call in. You actually have to actively unmute, not just on your phone like we're all used to, but pressing *#. It used to be, I think, #6 or *6. Now it's *#. So if you do have a question and you want to be part of this, you have to press *#. But otherwise, we appreciate keeping those as they are. So if you have background noise, it won't interrupt our call. And definitely do not place us on hold. We've had that happen as well. I think now that might not be a problem if everyone's muted, but still, you don't need to place us on hold. You're muted. Do business you need to do, and when you want to unmute, you press *#. And also, we've had some issues where people have done that *# and then found out that their speaker from their computer was giving feedback as well. So if you did dial in on your phone, just make sure your computer speaker's either the volume's low or you've muted that speaker out so that we don't get that feedback from you. The other thing you'll see if you look at that attendee list is a bunch of phone numbers, and we'd love to be able to know who's on this call with us today. So the easiest way to do that is if you'd all go right now into your chat box there on the left, at least that's where it is on my screen, bottom left, and just give us a bit about who you are and the state that you're representing, so everybody else can see who's on the line with us. As I said, we usually get about 18 states and mostly DOT, FHWA administrators, and some toll road authority folks. We'll make the presentations available to you today. safehighways.org. If you haven't been there, it's our resource. Liz and her team keep it as up to date as we can. If you find things on there from your state that are out of date, don't holler at us, just let us know. We'd love to update it, but it's hard to reach out to everybody all the time. So we have a chart there with the latest numbers that we have for the patrols around the country. We're trying to make it a resource for all of you to house your standard operating procedures, training guides, things like that. But it's only on you have to share them with us. So if you get on there and you're looking for resources and you have things from your state that you think others would benefit from, we'd be happy to house it for you. So that's pretty much it for our setup. If you do want to participate, ask questions, or if you have input, as I mentioned, there's several ways to do that. Right after each presenter, we'd like to leave a little bit of time. We want to make sure we get to all our presenters, so we don't let that go too long, but sometimes it's best right after you hear something to ask a question about what you just heard. So you can do that by raising your hand. You see the little icon, it's at the top of the screen for me, a little person with a hand raised. When you click on that, you'll get these options to raise a hand, and then we'll let you get your chance to ask questions in. If you don't want to voice it, you can also add it to the chat room, and Liz or myself or John or someone will see that question, and we will voice it for you and let the presenter answer it in that way as well.
Hey, Sam, can you hear me?
Yes, very good. Who's that?
This is Jason, Georgia DOT. I'm on my phone. I don't have access to my computer because I'm out of the office, so I can't follow the slideshow, but I am going to follow on the agenda. So while I won't be able to see the slides everybody's presenting, I just want to let everybody know that I'm here. I just didn't say anything earlier when I was on
Thank you for joining us, Jason. How's the weather in Atlanta?
It's getting better.
It's getting better. Traffic getting better as well?
Traffic is not getting better.
Yeah. For those that aren't aware, I'm calling in from Florida. Jason is, as you heard, in Atlanta. We've got Brett presenting from Alabama, and Brian is here from the Georgia area as well. So for whatever reason, we chose a lot of hurricane-located states for this call. So we appreciate you guys. I know you've got some higher priority things to take care of. Appreciate the time you're able to devote to this, and we just wish everyone safety as we bear down and get through this hurricane. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And the one thing about our National Operations Center of Excellence, this system, I think, the Adobe system we're using is great, but we, Travelers Marketing, and Liz and I have had to learn some things about it. It's our first use. So one of the things is we're not able to allow the presenters to change the slides directly themselves. So if you hear me or others saying, change, please change, that's just for this particular session, and we'll get that fixed and figured out before the next one. But other than that, Nilo, I think it's been a great partnership as we've moved this community under the National Operations Center of Excellence. So I'd love for you to tell us a bit more about your organization. Welcome, Nilo.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction, and we are happy to co-host this webinar and have you all on here. And I'm excited to hear from all our presenters in just a few minutes. So in the next 10 minutes, I'll do a short introduction of the National Operations Center of Excellence, or as we call it for short, NOCO, just so you know who we are and how we can connect and help you reach what you want. Next slide, please. So we were born out of the leading transportation groups, AASHTO, ITS America, ITE, and FHWA, who identified a need to share operation practice resources in the transportation as they evolve. So our mission is simple. We really want to empower the transportation system management and operations community, or TSMO community, to enhance their knowledge, skills, and abilities as they're reaching their subjects of interest. Next, please. So we try to be hub of the TSMO information and engage in the TSMO industry in three main aspects. One is our website, then our knowledge center, and last is our technical services, and I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those for you. Next slide, please. In this slide, I'm showing a snapshot of our website, transportationops.org. So it always changes. We're always trying to make it better and easier to use, and also easier to find resources that you're looking for. I want you to just, as you're looking to gather information for a project or new initiative or anything that you're looking for, look at this website also as a source of information and just searching. So right now, if you go to our homepage, we have an exciting announcement about our awards. So we have several categories nationally to recognize the agencies in their excellence in doing some of their works that they're doing. And the one award that is so much related to this group is the Major Incidents or Special Event Planning and Response. That we have that award just recognizes an agency who has done a good job in utilizing TSMO and also in interagency cooperation when they're planning and responding to a major event or an incident. That is due only in 8 days. You probably should have heard it through different channels that we advertise it. So just keep in touch and keep that in mind if you may be interested in applying for that. Next slide, please. So if you search something like a keyword search on our website, you can see right now in this screen, I typed traffic incident management, and there you can see these are the most recent documents that we added to our website, to our knowledge center. And then there's like this small tab that says FHWA Team KMS. So when you search for things, not only it searches our website, but also the team database that is integrated into that website. So if you click on that tab when you're searching, you can also go through that FHWA team website and just find resources, in terms of team and what you're looking for. Next slide, please. So we cover not only team, but a variety of different related subjects, including what you can see on the screen now. Our focus is mostly enhancing the knowledge transfer system. So there are a lot of good resources out there, but what we do is to enhance and just empower the community to be aware of those resources and use them effectively to their benefit. So a lot of more than 3,000 individual technical content and training material can be found there. So this is definitely something you should look for. And in the next slide, you can see I brought 2 example case studies. So one of the technical services that we just started to do is some very significant projects or successes that agencies had with their TSMO program. So 2 recent examples are in Washington, there was this Amtrak Cascade derailment, and we covered how their corridor-wide planning ahead of time helped them to really manage that situation very well, and also in Georgia, how they handle the I-85 bridge collapse very well. So it's like a 2-page, very easy to read case study. So it's just a great source of inspiration and just knowledge if you were up to look at it. Next slide, please. The other technical services that we have is our peer exchanges. With those, we usually have a minimum of 4 per year, and we dive into details with states, agencies, and organizations about topic areas that affect their agency at a region or national level. So a good example is that we recently had 2 team-related peer exchange. One was the performance-based contracting peer exchange that we had in Detroit. So we just talked about how SSP and also TMCs can be effectively managed if a set of performance measures were instated in the contract, and how we can best work together with the private agencies to our benefit and to their benefit to have a good TMC and SSP service. We also had another peer exchange on TISMO and freight, and one of the topics specifically was when there are incidents with freight vehicles, larger vehicles, commercial vehicles, like what are the agencies are doing in those cases, and what are some of the best practices in that area. Next, please. So the other technical services that we have is our webinars. It's again on our website. You can see our future upcoming webinars, but also the ones that we had before. All of them are recorded as a YouTube video that is shared with everyone on the website and also on our NOCO YouTube channel. So if you missed the webinar or you just want to see what happened before, you can definitely go there and check out those videos, and always that is complemented with the speaker information and also like presentation slides. And then let's see the next slide. I just wanted to ask from you that register on our website for our newsletter. We have these bi-weekly newsletters that have announcement on major TISMO and team events that are going on in the industry. Always we appreciate if you give us your feedback about our website and our technical services. Also consider adding NOCO logo and our link to your website. This is just a good way of resource sharing. And then finally, keep us in mind to share with us your calendar, your technical literature, and all that, so we can publish it on our website. And lastly, I just wanted to announce that we do have a webinar coming up in about a month. So on November 13 at 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern, we have the National Traffic Incidents Response Awareness Week kickoff webinar. In that webinar, we'll cover national program updates, the team self-assessment results, and also just all the Awareness Week activities that we're going to have. There's the registration link in here in the slide, so you can always go back to the slides and do that, or just go to our website and you can easily find it there. So that is all I had. I really appreciate being on this call with all of you, and I look forward with just working with all of you, getting feedback from you, and talking to you in future events and webinars. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nilo. This is Sam again. So just to be sure, Nilo, this actual webinar is going to be housed on your site as well. So people will be able to rewatch this if they weren't able to attend, correct?
That's right.
Great. So if there's anybody in your organization that couldn't make it, or if you want to see it again for something you may have missed, you can find the actual presentations themselves, including the recording, at the NOCO website. On the safehighways.org, we'll have the PowerPoints as PDFs. So if you just want to download the information, we'll have that in a simple form on safehighways.org. Okay, if you haven't seen, we have a survey up right now about the plans for the National Traffic Incident Response Week, so appreciate everybody making a vote on that. Any questions before we move on about the National Operations Center? Again, if you have questions, you can raise your hand at the top of the screen or just unmute your phone at *#. All right, one of our steering committee members, John McClellan, has been with us for quite some time. Has been tremendously helpful in getting these calls pulled together and with information about the topics and people we can talk with. John McClellan's been with the Minnesota Department of Transportation running their FIRST program, among other things there. So, John, I'm going to welcome you into the call, and I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Sam. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thanks, Nilo, for the info on NOCO. That's great to have another partner in there helping with this. So we'll get right going here. The topic is determining patrol coverage areas and when to expand. So a lot of this is, we all know that there's a need, and we all kind of have sort of a general grasp that there's a need, but we need to be able to quantify it. We need to be able to build the case for where it's needed and when it's needed, and then of course that all is necessary to get the big one, which is funding for it. So I think that's this topic was chosen on the poll at the end of the last session, and I think that's what folks were really looking to hear today, was to hear more about that. I know it's something in Minnesota that we've tried to do, and it's always a challenge to try to get the funding, and so be nice to get some other ideas on how to do that, on sources, and then also methodology for building the case for it. Just generally, I'll just, as I mentioned, to all the other folks, thank you for joining in, and just reminder, this is for us, by us. This is for members of in this community, for the state managers and supervisors for these programs. We all know what it is that we do and how important it is. And this is a place for us to be able to learn more about what others are doing and be able to interact with each other and be able to also share our best practices too. So thanks a lot again for coming in, and thanks to Sam for helping to also get this set up too. A lot of models out there for service patrols. So I know one thought for me in listening to a lot of these presentations since we've been doing it, that there's things that I hear that initially my first thought is, well, that doesn't apply to us, we'll never use that. And then 6 months later, something comes up and it's like, oh boy, that's exactly what it was that another state was talking about doing it, and then it's great to be able to share that information. So please, folks who are out there, if you have questions, put them in the box. And if you have thoughts on things that you want to hear more about from other states when we do the poll at the end, please put that in. And if there's something really cool that you want to talk about that your state's doing, also either at the end of this, or if you want to correspond with one of us steering committee folks directly, please. We're always we want to keep this going, keep this process moving. So I will. Got Sal's introduction here. I know a lot of folks probably know Sal. Sal's been around for a while. Our first presenter, Sal Cohen, is the Senior Director of Transportation Mobility for the New Jersey Department of Transportation Systems and Support Unit. In his current capacity, Sal is responsible for the oversight and management of a statewide operation comprised of New Jersey's Safety Service Patrol, the 24/7 statewide traffic management center in Woodbridge, the traffic operations center in Cherry Hill, and the department's 24/7 central dispatch unit. He previously served 15 years of private sector experience in transportation and incident management. Thanks, Sal, for your time. Go on ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you. It's great to be here among so many other partners in the mobility world. Wanted to say thanks to Sam and Liz for putting this together, and it's great to be a part of the overall organization with the National Operations Center of Excellence. We had a good support with that when it first started. My former assistant commissioner was one of the first people involved in that, Dennis Modiani, and it's taken on such a great path that I think the collaboration between Safe Highways and NOCO is definitely good. So some things that have changed a little bit here at the New Jersey Department of Transportation. I'll just give you something to chew on. We formerly had an organization called TSM, Transportation Systems Management. With a new governor, a new commissioner, and a little bit of foresight, our commissioner has taken our department's operations unit and merged our former TSM unit. So New Jersey can now say that it does have a TSM&O division that is comprised of all the aspects that TSM&O is. Granted, it's a different acronym. It's Transportation, Operations, Systems, and Support. A lot of people say it's TOS&S. But this is where SSP really does fit in, and where we really try to make a difference in the motoring public. You can go to the next slide. Hello? There we go. For a moment there, I wondered if I said all of that and I was on mute. So, of course, our job as public servants, as state DOTs, is to make sure that we can keep the traffic moving. The idea is to quickly get out there and safely remove any debris, any disruptions, anything that's going to prevent people from going to A to B. That could be home to work. That can be business to business. That can be, play to play. Whatever your travels are, we try to make sure that we're involved in making sure that it goes as smoothly as possible. And what we do is we really try to put together a systematic approach. How are we going to manage it? We want to make sure that we have some intelligence behind our systems. And really the solution in terms of the day-to-day face of the department is the Safety Service Patrol. Yes, they provide the assistance to motorists that have some sort of mechanical problem or encounter something that's related to an unforeseen circumstance. But in terms of what SSP does, they are our dedicated personnel. They are our face of the department. So they are coming face to face with every problem the roadway can have. Next slide. So a little bit of background in New Jersey. Program started in 1994. We're about to have our anniversary celebration. We try to do that every year. I know we're going to be coming up on 25 years very soon, it's exciting. What we wound up doing back in 2011 was a reduction in staff to be able to pull in the response areas to focus on certain areas where they had a high recidivism of incidents, where we were getting the most bang for our buck. Approximately 7,000 assists annually. That could be a crash that we've called to by state police. That could be an abandoned vehicle. That can be a removal debris. But what we do is not just help the motorist with, which way is New York and how do I get back to Pennsylvania, but, troopers. We want to make sure that the fire department is understanding that they are also working within a safe zone when SSP comes by and provides safety. One of the items that I want to point out here, we talk about we're assisting motorists. I believe it was in the last 2 weeks, New York State had a missing persons alert. The person was found by SSP in New Jersey. And those are the kinds of stories that, you always give the guy a pat on the back. We've gotten very heavily involved in terms of New Jersey's social media presence and our ability to make sure that these programs are well known and respected and honored. So we get that to our communications office as soon as it comes out. And with a newly elected governor and very interested in these kinds of stories commissioner, we promote these kinds of good deeds, these good news efforts to our Facebook page, other social media, our partners, so that they recognize the true value of what SSP does. Our partners at Federal Highway, I believe Ake Pomsavath from New Jersey Division Office is on the line. We can't do this without federal funding. They are a big promoter of the programs that we have, and they support us financially as well as in strategic partnership. We also have a portion of our funding from the State Farm Travelers Marketing Contract, which has been since about April of 2012, and working with Sam and the folks that are at Travelers Marketing has been a pleasure. So next slide. So when we talk about our coverage area, we essentially operate out of two facilities. We cover our northern half of the state from a yard off of an Interstate 287, and then we cover the southern half of the state off of another interstate in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So you can kind of see New Jersey, if you look at New Jersey, the profile kind of looks like a trooper. He's sideways facing, he's got the hat over his nose where the lines reach out to the Pennsylvania border, and the whole line's on the bottom left where it goes from kind of a 7 o'clock on your clock all the way up towards 2. That's a big interstate that runs through South Jersey, 295. But we focus pretty much on the northeastern part of the state and the southwestern part of the state, pretty much because those are our metropolitan areas. New Jersey doesn't necessarily have a metropolis. We are bordered by New York City in our northeast and Philadelphia in our southwest, and I'm not going to say anything about the Eagles or the Giants because I know I'll be eating crow in either aspect. So we try to cover our interstates as best as possible. We do have areas after 2011 where we reduced our approach and focus more on the repeating areas of requests, but that's not to say that incidents don't happen outside these coverage areas. We run 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, we run 16 hours a day from before dawn, about 4:30 in the morning, until about 8:30 at night. And Saturdays and Sundays, we do 10 hours a day. Depending on the holiday, we'll be out there. We're out there on Election Day, so people can see the value of your patrol and the service that state government can provide on a day when people are trying to get to the polls. We do major travel holidays as well. Jersey Shore is very well known as a travel destination, so we want to make sure that the Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day holidays are covered. So we do provide those as some holiday staffing as well. Next slide. So the question was, how does our data come through? Well, the primary source of data for all crashes in the state of New Jersey is your crash record. In New Jersey, it's the NJTR1, and that's completed by law enforcement. Every police department uses the same form statewide. But the problem is that system does not talk to our internal DOT system. While the NJTR1 is an electronic form that can be filled out inside the front seat of a patrol vehicle, it doesn't have a technology connection to the platforms that we have within DOT. So DOT uses its own primary data entry software. Some states have a private firm that does core software for them and automated detection. We have one, it's called OpenReach. We're a member of the Transcom Consortium here in the Northeast. And OpenReach is a multi-agency platform that I can see what happens on the Turnpike, I can see what happens on the Port Authority and any of the other consortium members' roadways and make the best decisions. So really what it does is it takes a lot of the information that our operators see on cameras and we can get from daily lane closures or unexpected crashes where we might be called about a problem or come upon a problem. But a lot of the information comes from your safety service patrol drivers. That information is shared then out of the input to our 511 public-facing site, which is both a website and a phone system. I believe the phone system is somewhere around several 100,000 calls per year, and if I remember correctly from our last stats, our website gets just a little over 1 million visits a year, which of course peaks during high snow season when everybody wants to see your cameras. Next slide, please. So this is exactly what we talked about. The data is not necessarily talking to each other. And in order to determine where we want to expand SSP, if we have the capability, if we have the funding, if we have the desire within the administration, that's also another piece. Is there buy-in? We have to see exactly where these incidents live. We have to see if we have a full understanding of where our crashes are. Because incidents reported in police crash records may not be in DOT systems. Just as DOT is the first one to respond to an incident, that may not be in the police's crash records just yet. They may not have it. So what we had to do is we had to get a first analysis of, well, where are our crashes? If we're going to expand, we want to make sure we're expanding in the right places. So we did an analysis and seeing where are we, the DOT, in terms of being accurate to the state's official record of a crash. Next slide. So the idea would also help us, not just in expanding SSP, but in terms of helping to get agencies to share data. One of the things that we're working on with FHWA, the I-95 Corridor Coalition, the folks in the TIM effort, nationally, meaning Paul Joden and those guys in D.C., is a regional effort to get state police, or in our case, state police, but law enforcement computer-aided dispatch data directly into your DOT data sets, and vice versa. So when I get a crash, because my guy caught it on a camera, it automatically goes to the state police. There's no phone call, there's no leaning across the hallway, and vice versa. When they get something over their CAD data from 911 data entry, it automatically gets fed to us. We also wanted to make sure that if we're taking into account what we're missing in terms of crashes, we might need new staff. We might need additional staff. But it really was guided towards, we want to expand our safety service patrol. Next slide. So we took the combination of both, took our database for Transcom, OpenReach, and the NJTR1, as well as what was coming out of our radio log for Safety Service Patrol. We document every radio call into a translated text to see what's in our area and what's not in our area, and see exactly where we stand. Next slide. So here's the sobering fact. We respond to about 64,000 events. These are on interstates. This is on the 225 or 230 linear miles that we patrol. That said, we're only aware of 10% of the crashes on all of our state roadways. That means we can either increase our staffing at our TOCs, but you can only have people look at so many cameras. We can make the technical advancement, which means connecting the two data sets, which is the best part. But I'm sure, as many of you know, your SSP patrols, when they come over the radio and they're calling the center or dispatch, they say, I just came across an accident. I got left and center lanes blocked. Send state police or send patrol. I need an ambulance. They're the first ones. So this is another way for us to get that situational awareness, that first awareness of a problem. Next slide, please. This is just another graphical representation of what we have. So what we don't have information on, we're missing some of the percentage of incidents on our interstates even. We don't patrol every mile of our interstate. That was part of that realignment in 2011. But for the most part, even where areas we don't have crashes, where we don't have patrols, we're missing more than just about half, 43% of the crashes that are on our arterial roadways. And to me, as a manager of real-time information, you know, that was, like I said, that's very sobering, and we want to try and make a difference. Next slide. So what we did was we mapped it, and we put out a heat map, and then laid it over where our SSP patrols were. So you can see pretty much the left-hand slide shows you where the crashes are that we didn't get. Those are the TR1s. But on the right-hand side, you can see our Safety Service Patrol coverage overlaid with the crash records. Our Safety Service Patrol is covered in that hazy blue, but all the crash records you'll see with the number of total crashes per mile, you can see the heat map. There's sections of red where I wouldn't have patrol. And that's where we started having the conversation about, you know what, maybe we don't necessarily need to be on the interstates. There's a value to having service patrol on your arterial roadways, on your signalized roadways. So next slide. So what did we do next? You're only as good as your presentation, right? We made sure that we came up with an appropriate cost analysis supporting the expansion. So it's not just getting additional guys or girls. It's putting additional vehicles into your fleet, which has of course, a real-time procurement value, and then a long-standing maintenance and then amortization value. You may add, right now in my north region part of the state, I'll have 2 supervisors and 13 personnel who are drivers around the state. So that's 14, 15 people driving around. They're talking to one dispatcher. If I were to expand SSP by double, I need more dispatchers. I can't overload a dispatcher like that. For those of you that work in SSP, you listen during a storm. You get a nasty storm, rainstorm, or even snowstorm. These guys are busy. They're blowing up your radio. You want one person handling that? We didn't. So we talked about additional DOT personnel at our radio CDU dispatch area, but also in our TMCs. More drivers get more crashes mean more data entry means more TMC personnel. Also, you don't just buy the truck, you get everything that's in the truck. We did a cost analysis. Our trucks run us about $110,000. That's empty. That's not filling a truck with your bottle jacks, your hoses, your racing jacks for your aluminum, any of the bits and tools and pieces that go to helping motorists out. And then you also got to pay for your guys to be dressed in their uniform. They got to wear vests. You're not sending your guys out in 30-degree weather, wearing short sleeves. There's a lot more cost in terms of just the trucks and just the people. Next slide. We wound up coming up with a display. This is our current roadway, and if we expand it, these are the additional miles we get and the additional proposed coverage. Next slide. Essentially talks about where we go next. So this was the proposal that I mentioned to you before. We didn't act on it because when we got down to what it would entail, our proposal, scientifically done, our proposal showed us adding nearly 70 personnel, double. Now, double is a lot. You want to make sure that you become realistic. And the first glance where someone said double wasn't the real final presentation, but it kind of didn't get past management because that meant FTEs or full-time employees that state government, keeps like, nuts in their pockets for winter. But what you have to do is you have to come up with a process to integrate your data and make sure your data goes back and forth. You want to make sure that whatever comes between you and law enforcement is shared in real time so that you can take your information and show it to them saying, you know what, it's realistic that we have data needs. The ability of someone to go out and help other people on the roadway, to help law enforcement clear that scene is incredibly important. Look at that. Got my timer all set. But at the same time, there's one last slide, I believe. Correct. So the value of SSP in some of these programs, you have to be able to explain it. If you cannot explain to them the value of expanding, they're not going to buy into it. So we had a major rehabilitation project of the Pulaski Skyway. It's an elevated deck that runs through several towns in the northern New Jersey area, and it's not an interstate. It is, a bridge, essentially, with that underwent a significant redecking project and construction. We had our partners. If you can't do the analysis yourself, if you don't know how to get the analysis done, talk to your bosses in DOTs or talk to your research personnel in some of these research facilities or education facilities. I use the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Their engineering department is great. They do a lot of my research. I gave them all of my data and said, I need you to help me make sense of this. I need you to show me what we've got. During the first 6 weeks of our deployment on this project, we noticed that we reduced your duration by over half, which basically meant that every incident was less than 20 minutes now instead of close to 40. We totally looked at some of the savings that you try and get to, and through all of the analysis of did it save me money, did it save me time, did it help prevent pollutants entering the environment, and the like. The waste of gas and the time spent that these people translate, people smarter than I, that they translate into an actual dollar. During the first 6 weeks, we saved $900,000 in terms of lost time, expended gas, and things like that. Take the time to understand the data you have. take the initiative to see where you may be valuable in expanding, and be solid of your case before you present it. We still have plans on the shelf for expansion, and we're just waiting for the right opportunity to walk in like Robert Moses when they say, hey, we're thinking about building a bridge, and you reach on the shelf and you pull the plans off and you say, I can do that for you. So I believe that's the last slide of my presentation. Again, I want to thank the folks at the Safe Highways and NOCO and my partners at FHWA who really do support this program day in and day out.
Hey, thanks, Sal. Great job. That's definitely a very very data-driven way to do it, and great to have that plan on the shelf ready to go. And thanks for including dispatch, because that is a big side of it that sometimes doesn't always get holistically get thought of on there. And then I'll add in there too is the if you have to do radio links, if you have a new service patrol that's expanded into an area, and maybe if you're not fortunate enough to have a statewide radio system, you also have to build those radio links back to dispatch as well.
Yeah, we have we break our patrol up north and south, so we have 2 dedicated channels, one for north and one for south. So if we were going to expand in other places in the state, we would have to talk with our internal radio personnel and basically assign an existing channel within our band to SSP. You don't share SSP dispatch with any other business if you want to get it right. They are dispatchers who know where crashes are. They are dispatchers and operators who are talking about walking in live traffic. I don't need somebody who's, doing a part-time gig on that radio channel. It needs to be specific. So you're right. It's very important.
Yeah, for sure. And a big, definitely a big plus too on the CAD integration. That was a huge help for us here in Minnesota as our program evolved and expanded. That CAD integration is fantastic as far as increasing the efficiency, both for the service patrol, but also for the dispatchers, and then the impact with patrol. So good luck with that. That is a big one. And there are there's a few other questions that we had came up here. Wait and see if anybody in the group has anything. But did you guys did you think about any other shifting to a different kind of truck or a different kind of vehicle, or adding different kinds of tools, especially as you're looking at arterials or maybe going out into more rural areas?
So our current patrols are on limited access highways on the interstate. We only recently, and by recently I mean within the last 2 years, accepted a new design for our trucks. We're the Ford 350 Super Duties. Our trucks, if you go onto our website, or if you go, I think it's on, Sam, it might be on Thank a Driver, you might be able to see the New Jersey image on there. We've got a couple of trucks in our fleet. Some of them are the 350 Super Duties that basically have a rollback, not as a tow truck, but the roll top on top of the pickup, on top of the bed of the pickup, where we put equipment and things like that. But we went to more of a rapid response kind of a vehicle with multiple shelves that slide in and out. I didn't want to start reinventing the wheel for which vehicles we'd put on which roadways, because I'd need to be as flexible and interchangeable as possible. If I open up the yard and I was given the go-ahead, I don't have the additional vehicles. I'd probably have to, maybe realize where I might have vehicles that are not regularly used. Let's say we wanted to stand them up right away, kind of like the, get your foot in the door, keep your foot in the door, and walk in the door. If they say yes, I'm going to start plans to moving bodies, equipment, and find the office and plant my flag before someone says, you know what, never mind. So I didn't want to change vehicles from that point.
Sure. Did you get any requests, or I guess, did you have any cities or local PDs or local fire? Did you get any feedback from the locals asking you guys to come in, or how does that factor into your planning?
So our relationship currently in response is with the state police, and that's because we're on the interstates. They see and recognize the value of having other vehicles pull up and provide advance notification for their activities downstream. When we did the Pulaski Skyway project, we walked in on Newark, Jersey City, and Kearney, probably 3 of the most difficult cities to show up and say, hey, what can I help you do? Because they're dealing with so many other things at a million miles an hour. It wasn't until we were actually pulling up behind these law enforcement entities that they said, you know what, I'm glad you're here. They saw that. We did not approach some of the heat maps that you saw in my presentation. We did not approach the local municipalities because we didn't want to make it sound like, hey, we might be coming, and then we don't. So we knew the targeted areas we would be focusing on, some of the areas where we really were missing out on more than 40% of the response areas on some of the crashes. And we would have had our relationship with the state police as well as our TIM program start the initial outreach as far as this is a program that makes roadways safer, clears incidents quickly. You don't need to send a cop out for every piece of tire debris, and we can help reopen your roadways quick, and you can really kind of rely on us as a resource.
Yeah, makes sense. Question in the chat box looks like from New Mexico. Does using federal funding affect your ability to respond to areas that are non-interstate?
Absolutely not. Our partners at FHWA recognize that safety service patrols are a valuable response and tactic in the TSMO toolbox. Yes, we do provide interstate coverage, but our safety service patrol works on a number of different last-minute major projects. We did the Super Bowl. We did the Pulaski Skyway. We did the Pope when the Pope came to Philadelphia. So these guys were patrolling on limited access highways. It was not they can only be used on interstates. And we didn't push this plan to FHWA. We knew we would have gotten support. I'm not going to put words in their mouth. They have said, however you want to help grow your program, we realize the benefit it has. But at the same time, I didn't want to walk in the door and say, I need X in terms of money when I was going to have difficulty getting the FTE from my own state government.
Sure. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Sal. I appreciate your time and your expertise on this. And for folks who are listening, if you have other questions, type them in. There'll be time to circle back at the end too. Thanks again, Sal, and I think we'll move ahead to our next presenter, Brett. Brett Sellers, Assistant TSMO Engineer for Alabama Department of Transportation. Brett graduated from Auburn University with a Bachelor of Civil Engineering and has 15 years experience in traffic engineering. Brett has worked in roles with city, county, and state governments, as well as a traffic engineering consultant firm. Brett resides in Birmingham, Alabama with his wife Blair and enjoys hunting and fishing. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate the introduction, and thanks everybody for coming on the call. Good afternoon or good morning, I guess, depending upon which time zone you're in. We are focusing for the first time in a while on our safety service patrol, and we're really excited about where we're headed. So, and I'll walk through some of that here. Next slide, please. All right, so I'll give you a little history of our program. We call our program ASAP. It stands for Alabama Service and Assistance Patrol. We started in Birmingham in 1997 patrolling the interstates. The Birmingham area is the only metropolitan area that we have in the state that qualifies for CMAQ funding, and some of that funding is used to aid this program. In the early 2000s, we expanded the ASAP brand and program to the Mobile area to help with tunnel operations for the tunnels on the I-10 under the Mobile River. That was previously done just through normal DOT operations. They had a tow truck and things of that nature. So really, I guess, so to speak, safety service patrols in the state began back in the 70s in a light form. But again, in 2003, they adopted the ASAP program and kind of formalized more of what we do in Birmingham. Next slide. So I rejoined the department about 6 months ago after doing some different things, and this was kind of the first task that I was given, which is developing a manual, doing a lot of research, seeing what other states are doing. I became aware of this Safety Service Patrol sharing network and participated in the last call. So this has been a good resource, and for others out there that may be in the same situation that we're in, I encourage you to take part. This is a good resource. So we were able to use some information that we've had and garner it. But really what we want to do is establish guidelines. As I started this process, I did ride-alongs with our guys in Birmingham and those in Mobile. And it was pretty interesting to see the disparities between what they carry on the trucks, how they're outfitted, all those different things. So we're trying to get in a mode where we get some standards between those. Things like defining the duties. What services are they going to provide? And establishing standards again. Developing a training program. The guys in Birmingham have a good 8-week training program that we need to expand upon. And we really need to focus in Mobile on establishing a formal training program. They usually do a lot of ride-alongs and then eventually get their own truck. So we want to make sure that we get standards between that. And then not only that, the other things that we're looking at is a revised logo. So as part of our 511 program, we have developed a website, Algo Traffic, and we are starting to tailor things around that, such as Algo Video. We're looking at any tolling applications would be Algo Pass. So we're looking at how do we incorporate that from a branding standpoint into what we do with our ASAP. So you very well may see this Algo logo with some type of ASAP down where it says traffic on the trucks as we move forward. Next slide, please. So we're a decentralized state. And I'm sorry, the graphic doesn't look very good. I apologize for that. But this is a very poor outline of the state of Alabama. And the green shading, the darker the green, the more populated the areas are. So as again, we're a decentralized state. We have 5 regional traffic management centers. Birmingham, Mobile, Montgomery, and Tuscaloosa have come on in the last few years. And Huntsville has just been added within about the last 3 months. So we are in a growth mode. Out of these 5 traffic management centers, the ASAP guys are dispatched. All of that is done through our DOT. They don't take direct calls from the local patrols of the highway patrol or the local police departments or sheriff's offices. But at this point, we offer ASAP services in Birmingham, Mobile, in Montgomery, and Tuscaloosa. We currently do not offer those services in Huntsville. So as one of the things we'll get to in just a second, we're really evaluating what criteria should drive whether or not we put those on routes and what routes we would put that on. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. All right, so as I said, we've got recent expansions in service areas of Montgomery and Tuscaloosa. We have 2 trucks running in Montgomery, and they are running from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we have one shift that starts in the morning. The guy comes in somewhere about midday to kind of help cover that load. And in Tuscaloosa, we only have 1 truck running, and he runs from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So as you can see, we have gaps in those areas that we really want to define how do we move forward with addressing those gaps that we have and really allowing the data to drive that. And the reason why I put these 2 pictures up here is the discrepancy between the trucks. We're getting back to the standards of what we're really working on. You can see the different types of logos. There's not a lot of consistency between where those logos are placed. The truck on the right side there is our truck in Tuscaloosa, and it has the Algo logo on it already. But as you can see, it's black and not green as the one that we have. So really just trying to wrap our hands around what these regions are doing and how to put that together into a seamless package to where if you're traveling in Birmingham and you have an issue, you see that truck, or you live in Birmingham and you see those trucks on a day in, day out basis, it generates a brand standard to where if you travel to our coast down to Mobile and you have a problem, you call for service, that truck pulls up, looks the same as the one in Birmingham that you see every day, and there's a comfort level of what you know that this program's about. So that's really where we're headed with that. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the big things that my boss has tasked me with is looking at mathematical ways that we can help aid in taking it to the front office for saying we need to expand these patrol areas. And I've done a lot of research. Maybe I just haven't looked in the right places, or maybe the state's IT group has, unfortunately, some good resources that may be blocked through our firewall filters. But I wasn't able to find a lot of information, and I discussed this with Sam over the last week. But this is one application that I did find through an FHWA document that was released in April of 17 that was priorities and best practices. And they had an equation in there that was apparently developed by the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. You can see it on the slide. I won't go through all of that. But it specifically looked at the average annual daily traffic, the number of crashes, and the segment mile. And they have some constant there. I'm not really sure how they devised that constant. But that was one of the only things I could find in trying to give us some justification of what we were doing. So I took this and started trying to apply it to some of the routes that we currently serve and to some of the routes that we do not serve, just to see how we would fit into this. And the way they define it is if you have an incident factor greater than 4, they kind of move the route forward through in the process from what I could gather. So as I began to run routes in the Birmingham area that we currently patrol, I was getting numbers of like 126, some in 150 range, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is gonna establish that we've got to patrol the entire state. But as I started making it out to some of the rural areas and running numbers there, we saw numbers of 1 and 2. So so far with the preliminary work that we've done in evaluating this to fit our needs, I think we're on the right track. And we've run this for the Huntsville area, which I've included on the slide here in a second, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But also, you know, our plan is to develop this, since we're a decentralized state, and to hand it out to the regions and allow them to run all of their routes consistently every year, so they begin to develop a pattern. Okay, is this one starting to get close from a budgeting standpoint? And I know I need to be looking at some type of expansion, whether that is just increasing the route or if that's adding new routes, which would require new trucks and new services. So next slide, please. Okay, so how do we go about gathering that data? The state of Alabama has a pretty good, robust data set, a GIS map that has these different locations where we have our ADTs posted. So there's also a segment there where we have a lot of continuous count stations that report monthly by lane. There's all kind of reports you can compile. So what we want to do is develop a culture to where they access this data and they fill out this spreadsheet, and they're looking at it even getting down to a monthly basis. I-65 carries a lot of traffic during the summertime from the northern states of Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, some of that area, down to the coastline to enjoy the beaches during the summer. So we have a lot of influx of traffic on weekends and things like that going down and coming back on Sunday afternoons. You know, we want to make sure that we're able to provide service for those people as well. So it may not necessarily mean that we have to expand our services or necessarily our locations, but maybe we expand the hours that we do it and the way that we concentrate that, and really allowing the data to drive that information. Next slide. Crashes. Through a partnership with the Center for Advanced Public Safety at the University of Alabama, we have an e-crash system that now all of our municipalities are a part of as well. So for us, our highway patrol is really limited, and they do not necessarily work all the crashes on the interstates and things of that nature. If the interstate runs through a city's jurisdiction, they will work the interstate crashes. So for instance, in Birmingham, the city of Birmingham often works the normal fender bender type crashes. If it's a major incident, obviously the highway patrol will get involved. But we have data that we can get access to typically within about a 24-hour period. They also develop the critical analysis reporting environment that gives us tools. They build a data set that is often done over the period of about 3 or 4 years. We can come in and do a lot of hot spots and then post it by milepost, which really makes it easy in filling out the spreadsheet that I believe is on the next slide. So we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay. Yeah, so this is the worksheet that I've created. There's nothing fancy about it. I know there's a lot of engineers that can get into spreadsheets and make those things look pretty, but I'm more about function than I am about style. So this is a basic spreadsheet that we've developed. This is one of the routes we would consider for expansion in our Huntsville area. It's the I-565 area that connects I-65 over to the city of Huntsville. It's about 20 miles that we've evaluated here, and based off the data from last year's ADT and crashes, you can see that there's one short segment there that's kind of near the airport that they're saying doesn't fit into the factor, but it's very close. So these are the kind of things that we want our areas, our regions, to be focusing on. And obviously, if you've got a little segment that's sandwiched in between several others that warrant, you're not going to skip over that. You're going to go ahead and serve it. So this is just an idea of the direction that we're going with this equation. Next slide, please. So while we do want to have justifications, because that helps a lot in budgeting and going to the front office to ask for funding, we don't want to take away that ability for these region TSMO engineers to use what we like to call engineering judgment. Just because if you run the segment and it doesn't meet an incident factor of 4, doesn't mean that you can't service that route. We have a lot of other considerations that we want to try to incorporate eventually, such as the amount of truck traffic. The freight just-in-time delivery. We have a lot of automobile industry that's moved into the state recently, and even neighboring states. We have Mercedes-Benz in the Tuscaloosa area, Hyundai down in Montgomery, Honda in Lincoln, which is in our east kind of central area. And they just recently announced in the last several months that Toyota Mazda will build a plant in Huntsville. So that's another factor that we want these people to take into. A lot of these industries use just-in-time delivery. For instance, over at the Mercedes plant, since we've gotten the traffic management center going over there and developed sharing information with them and developed a good partnership, I was told a couple of days ago that they have not had a shutdown due to incidents or other things that would be incorporated into traffic delays since those advisories have been shared. So we're really excited about that and really wanting to kind of expand that around the state to make sure that we're not apprehending commerce. That's what a lot of this is about, is return on investment. So not only that, work zones as well. You know, if you got a situation where based off of crashes or ADT that it may not necessarily tell you that you should put a truck on it, but you know during these long duration work events that lanes are shifted and shoulders are basically done away with to make travel lanes just to continue to provide the capacity that you once had through this time. We need to be servicing those. If there's a car that breaks down, they oftentimes don't necessarily have anywhere to go. Or along the coastline, we have a lot of bridges, and they may not necessarily have adequate shoulders. So if we can get those people and get those out of the way, we want to make sure that even necessarily that it may not meet the justification, we know that it's there, just kind of that common sense factor. And then also using the data to shorten routes. A lot of times, and a lot of you guys probably also do this, if you're in a situation where you're short, you've got some people on vacation or some sickness, and you oftentimes have to shorten up routes. But we will do that a lot of times at peak hours. So maybe at 4:30, we will shorten a route maybe from a 10-mile stretch down to a 5-mile stretch and kind of focus in on these areas that are known problem areas. So using the data to justify that is really where we're headed. Next slide, please. Another thing that we're going to focus on is the emergency operations and special events. We don't get a lot of it down here, thank goodness, but snow and ice can cause us problems. So when you guys typically get snow and ice in other parts of the state, up north and out west, it's business as usual. For us, we come to a crawl. We can't function. We don't know how to drive on it. So how can we outfit our patrol operators to help them? One of the things that I'm looking at in this robust process of diving into what we're doing is looking at aluminum service bodies to allow for more weight to be added to the bed. And we're going to look at dropping in some just hopper spreaders that they could do some spot treatments in areas that they know of as they're cruising along, and they come up on a slick spot that they can turn on, drop a little CMA or something on it, and then radio back and say, look, we probably need to get the district crews out here to do a little bit more work. But it's that reduction of time and providing that service that we're looking to do. Also, our I-65 hurricane contraflow, thankfully we haven't had to do that much, and we didn't have to do that through this round, but we did see an enormous influx of traffic come from the Florida Panhandle where Michael did strike yesterday. And tracking that, you know, we need to make sure that these people are put out enough as it is, and having to deal with Mother Nature. If they have automobile issues, we want to try to be there to help them out as much as we can. Also, University of Alabama, I don't know if y'all know it or not, but they play a little bit of football over there, and the rest of us are just trying to play catch up. So, but they seat a little over 100,000, and that's just the people who go in the stadium. Tailgating is a big thing here in the South. We don't do we really don't do any pro sports, so that's our kind of religion on a Saturday afternoon, is everybody flocks to these college towns. And we have a lot of queues that we have to protect, so reallocating assets. We don't necessarily go hire more at this point, but we do a lot of sharing between regions. And we do a lot of that based off of expected data, but we're gathering this data now as we're getting these points out to where we can say, look, we're expecting ADTs of this, we need to cover it with this many trucks, doing some of those kind of things. Also, to a lesser degree, doing that with Auburn University home games. I-85 runs by there, and we recently started that. One of the home games, they had a bus crash, a tractor-trailer crash that held up the team bus trying to get over to the stadium. And that's the last thing we want to do, since that's my alma mater, is give them any other obstacles to try to overcome. Their offense has enough right now. But Talladega Superspeedway is an event that's actually going on this weekend, and while NASCAR is not quite as popular as it used to be, we do see an influx in the state. So resource sharing, you know, we may pull a truck from Mobile up to Montgomery to help with the Auburn games, and send some additional trucks from Tuscaloosa over to Talladega and things of that nature. So really trying to make the most of what we have. Next slide, please. Okay, so the big one, funding, staffing. How do we pay for it all? As I mentioned earlier, Birmingham is the only area in the state that qualifies for CMAQ funding, which we are very thankful for to be able to utilize in Birmingham. But as you know, that I just spoke about, we've got three other areas that we've expanded in, and hopefully going to do a fourth here shortly. And all of that funding right now is coming out of routine or special maintenance funds. We have been fortunate enough to establish a line item in our maintenance budget, so we're not going to district managers who are trying to run planning programs and bridge programs and saying, okay, we're going to take this funding away from you to spend money on putting these trucks on the road. A lot of times if you don't sell the service very well, these guys are trying to do more of less as it is, and it becomes difficult to convince them that you're going to give them even less to put some trucks on the road that, in their mind, oftentimes they just ride around and give out gas and fix some tires, which is a mindset shift that I'm responsible for changing, and we're well on our way with that. But also a battle for employment numbers. Our governor, our leadership has us capped with the number of state employees that we have. So if somebody retires or quit, it's almost like they throw us all in a pit and we fight it out, and whoever is the last man standing gets to get the ability to hire a new employee. And that's just really difficult when you're trying to keep up with the pace and speed that the public expects us to be able to do that with. So as out of that, we're looking at contract staffing possibilities. How can we service the needs of our constituents in the most economical and quickest way? So that's something that we'll evaluate as we move forward. Also, the procurement times for vehicles. We recently met with our equipment folks in the last 2 weeks to kind of prep them of things that we're looking at, the new requirements for the trucks, and how it'll be branded. All those things fall under them to give them a heads up. And we talked to them about how long is it going to take us to get a truck? How long are you guys going to allow us to run these trucks? What kind of mileage are we looking at before, we're going to be wanting to replace those? And we kind of settled on they're going to want to know when we need a truck a year in advance. And that can be sometimes difficult if you think about how long that would take. How do we respond to these trucks get hit? It's a law of averages, the amount of miles that we put on them and what they do, making sure that the focus is on getting those fixed in a timely manner and getting them back on the road, which we've had some difficulties with that. Just some of it's personnel issues from the standpoint of having enough numbers to be able to do the preventive maintenance that's required on these trucks. So we're looking at possibly, contracting some of that out to an express oil change type place or something like that. And really getting back to the data-driven decision-making and budgeting. That's a big thing. Like I said, I mentioned the paving programs and the bridge programs. A lot of times that's what our front offices understand, because that's what they've done throughout their 20 to 30-year careers. So we face a challenge of being able to put our numbers into a program, so to speak, that matches up as we're fighting for the same funding that they are. So really driving the data and how we build that up. So with that being said, I'm looking at just learning as much from you guys as I hope that you can learn from me. And I know that some more established programs probably didn't learn anything from that, but I hope if there's some people on the call here that are looking at starting some safety service patrols, maybe you're starting from scratch, that some of this information will be beneficial to you. I think that's going to be it. We'll move to the next slide. That is it. So I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I'll try to talk about those.
All right. Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it. How many trucks do you guys have total?
Regionally, we've got about 15 in Birmingham. We've got the 2 in Mobile. In Montgomery, 1 in Tuscaloosa, so 18, and then probably about 10 in the Mobile area. So just under about 30 currently.
Okay.
And I'll say that all of those trucks, whatever shifts we have, they use the same trucks. So in Mobile, for instance, they run 24/7 because of the tunnel operations. Those trucks are running 24/7. They don't have their own trucks that they take home and just report for duty, so to speak.
Yeah, it's the same as in Minnesota. We do the same thing. Are the trucks all the same? You mentioned about the differences in the decaling and the labeling, but are they all fundamentally about the same trucks, the same equipment on them?
Well, that's a great question. As you could probably also tell, the truck in Tuscaloosa there was a single cab truck, and it had dual rear wheels, which is something else that we don't want to get into because these guys do a lot of shoulder running, and we don't want them sitting on the shoulder trying to change tires most of the time. So no, currently Birmingham and Mobile, yes, they are, but as these programs have come on, a lot of times these regions have kind of looked on their yard to see what they have available, and they're filling them out with that until we can kind of get this program going. So that is part of the standards that I am addressing in the manual that will be done towards the end of this year, and we are specifying extended cab trucks, four-wheel drive.
And they're all gas, right? No diesel?
Currently they are gas. We will be specifying diesel.
All right. Do you get any any of those, like Honda or any of those, or Nissan or any of those big manufacturers, have they said anything? Have you gotten any outreach from the local agencies or the MPOs or anybody specifically mentioning safety service patrol as a way to keep traffic moving for their factories?
No, and I don't think we've done necessarily a lot of reaching out, which is something else that I'll be looking to change after the first of the year. My goal has been to get the manual, the heart of the manual. As we know, a document like this is never really completed because as technology changes and as we grow and learn, it'll be living. But when we get the bulk of it done and get it adopted there, my goal is to go out and sell the program. So I'm not going to wait on them to come to us. We're going to go out and try to generate that interest and see what we can get.
Sure. Well,
I will say that, just real quick, in a meeting with the city of Huntsville that we had, making them aware of our TMC that had just been stood up there, as we started talking through the benefits of the TMC, there was a slide with ASAP in there, and a lot of those officers that were there representing the city were already aware of it, I guess through Tim's training, and immediately began to ask how soon can we get this on the road. So it's kind of had a brand that's been built, and these other responders are aware of it, and they understand the value of it from what I can tell. So from that standpoint, I don't think I'm going to have to do a lot of selling with them. They basically said, how fast can we get it?
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to hear how that goes. If that, I guess where your luck goes with that. Be something interested to hear about that in another year, how that is. I'll just add in two comments. I know going to the Jiffy Lube is something that we did a few years ago, and that helped, at least for that kind of basic maintenance stuff, getting the oil changes. That was a help for us. And we also had to counter that, free AAA attitude back when our program almost got cut, 14 years ago. And one of the things that we did as part of the rebranding was changing the name from Highway Helper to First and making sure that safety was part of the name. So I guess just as a real, just as an off-the-top suggestion would be to change it to Alabama Safety and Assistance Patrol, and maybe that might be, something to think about going down the line if that helps, articulate what the reason is you're out there.
Very good. Duly noted.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. All right. So our next presenter, Sean Kinney, was going to join our call today, and I don't believe he is on today. He's going to talk about Florida's experience with determining patrol coverage areas and planning for recent patrol expansions. However, Sean is in Tallahassee, and as we've all seen the news, Hurricane Michael is there. Sean was without power yesterday and is not able to join, at least by computer. If he's here by phone, it may be, but it will have to hear from him on another time. Best wishes, and hopefully everything for safety and recovery, and hopefully everybody's stable down there in your area and down in Florida if you are listening. So good luck to you, Sean, and everybody else in that part of the country. So our final presenter is Brian Purvis. Brian is a professional engineer with 26 years of experience specializing in transportation, TSMO, transportation, safety, service patrols, and ITS TMC operations. After graduating with a BS in civil engineering from North Carolina State University, Brian has spent the majority of his career focused on ITS operations and traffic incident management, having previously served as the State Incident Management Engineer for the North Carolina Department of Transportation, where he's responsible for the day-to-day operations of IMAP, the Incident Management Assistance Patrol Program, and statewide coordination of their TIM program. Brian currently serves as the program manager for GDOT's newly developed CHAMP, Coordinated Highway Assistance and Maintenance Program, which provides motorist assistance and supplements GDOT's maintenance on all interstates outside of Metro Atlanta. Thanks, Brian.
I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Turn off that ugly mug. Go to the next slide. All right, so we all know part of the reasons for service patrols, you know, a lot of it is going to be crashes and disabled vehicles. They account for about 25% of the congestion out on the roadway. The rest of it, like inclement weather, you know, we do a pretty good job, especially here in Georgia. They do a tremendous job of managing inclement weather. Even with Michael coming in as quick as it did and picking up steam and strength like it did, you know, you really didn't hear anything negative as far as traffic operations. And I think a lot of that is due to the coordinated programs that they have like Hero and Champ. So next slide. And a big part of a program like this is also the safety side of it. We can do a lot of things to minimize the first incident out there, the first crash. Secondary crashes, we all know, account for about a third of what's out there, and those account for about 20% of the fatals. So there's a lot of justification for these types of programs, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the difference between urban and rural. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, there we go. A big part of this is obviously most everybody on this call has had the Federal Highway Sharp 2 TIM training, but you know the responders, just like Brett said, is the response community. They've got a lot on their plate. Law enforcement is trying to investigate. Fire and rescue is protecting life and property. Towing and recovery professionals are trying to clear scenes. So they all have to be laser focused on their job and then watch the traffic out there on the roadway and manage traffic control, manage that flow of traffic. You know, as DOT professionals, our job is to keep traffic flowing, so we have to find that balance. That's something that in the rural areas of all of our states is we've been a little deficient at, because to keep these numbers down, and rightfully so, a lot of the responders will just completely shut down the roadway or choke it to almost a standstill to protect themselves. So there's some of the justification for these types of programs. Next slide. So in addition to that, you can keep going. In addition to that, some of the issues that we see out there are obviously freeway capacity. So in the rural parts, you know, if you look at a state like Georgia, we all have some diversity in our traffic. Most of your urban areas have multiple travel lanes. Most of your rural interstates only have 2 lanes in each direction. So any disruption out there, even just a stall on the shoulder of the road, is going to cause about 5% congestion. As soon as you shut down one of those 2 lanes, or if it becomes a crash, you're losing 20% of your roadway. You take 1 lane, you've lost 2/3 of your roadway's capacity. We're talking about a roadway in rural Georgia where you've got high-speed traffic and low expectation of slowing down. Completely different mindset from the traveling public. When you get into urban zones, you can easily see on this chart any disruptions to traffic. If you've got, you know, multiple lanes, it helps you out tremendously with that congestion. Next slide. So again, just some visuals. You can click through these pretty quick. Shoulder crash, next slide. That's only going to account for a small amount of your congestion out there. As soon as it's a crash, it goes to 20%. Again, you're losing 50% when responders show up and do a lane plus 1 type of a situation. So capacity is always hampered tremendously out on rural roadways. Next slide. Again, most motorists out there, there's not a lot of landmarks in rural interstates. If you have mile markers out there, they're usually at the mile increment. So there's not a lot of things for the traveling public to identify not only where they're at going along a facility, but do they even know which direction they're traveling. When you get into networks that are merging in and out, they may not know if they're going north, south, east, or west. Fire departments typically are deploying from both directions, trying to find the needle in the haystack. When they do that, you sometimes get into situations, especially if you don't have a strong TIM team, traffic incident management team presence, where they'll be stopping on the wrong side of the interstate, doubling your chances of congestion, doubling your chances of secondary crashes, and obviously doubling your chances of fatalities out there. Next slide. And then you get into the training aspect. So most of these fire departments that we run across are rural, are volunteer in nature. So they don't have a lot of training. They don't do a lot of incident management training. They don't coordinate with other agencies. So you get into some confusing type of scenarios where once you get into the urban areas, the traffic is more established. You have standards of putting out traffic control. Typically you have safety service patrols, but once you get out in rural, that's not the case. You're kind of leaving it up to the local law enforcement, fire and towing, to do whatever they can to keep traffic moving. Next slide. So how do we work better to manage incidents in especially rural parts of the country? Next slide. So what Georgia did is they created the Coordinated Highway Assistance and Maintenance Program. We started this 2 years ago. This is a complete statewide roadway assistance and maintenance patrol. It covers basically all the interstates outside of Metro Atlanta. Obviously, you've got Jason Josie on the phone. HERO was established back in 1994, 2 years before the Olympics occurred in Atlanta. This is a little different. It's funded 100% with state dollars, and I'll go a little bit deeper into that in a minute. About half of the service patrols across the country are state DOT employees. About half of them are contract. So HERO is they are state employees. Our operators are contract staff. We're with AECOM. Our operations, we patrol 16 hours a day, basically 6 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., 2 shifts, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And obviously, like any other good service, we're already funded with state dollars. We're branded as Georgia DOT. So it is a free service. You cannot take any payment or anything for your services. Next slide. So just like most safety service patrols, most all of them handle motorist assistance. About 2/3 of them handle roadway clearance. The CHAMP program does both of those services. And then you get a lot of your elite services like you have with the HERO units, where congestion requires a higher level, which is emergency response. They actually transfer fuel from overturned vehicles. So HERO does all 4 of those services. The CHAMP program does the top 2. Next slide. So when we started this program, we initially started out with 16 routes. Those different colored areas. So the center is Metro Atlanta. They call that District 7. There's 6 other regions of the state, 6 other districts. Those 16 routes that we initially covered are about 64 miles per route. We also have a dispatcher in each one of those district offices. They work the same hours that the operators do in the field. So we started out with a staff of about 72, 3 managers, 3 supervisors, about 48 operators in the field, and 18 dispatchers. Next slide. So the difference, and Jason can probably elaborate, I think they cover about 325 miles. It's probably expanded due to their coverage of a lot of toll expansions in Metro Atlanta. The CHAMP unit covers 1,025 miles statewide. So we quickly saw that we were having a lot of urban congestion and a lot of motorist assist calls in the Macon area where you see the triangle in the center of the state. So we quickly added another route to cover that. Next slide. basically, while we were training, training and first starting the program 2 years ago this November, we saw the need for that expansion. In addition to that, the I-95 corridor on the southeastern side and the I-75 corridor on the northwestern side of the state, those corridors were almost 100 miles each. So with a route that long, basically if we were on I-95 and near South Carolina, we would get a call that a motorist needed assistance down by the Florida border and, would have to take an hour-long trek to get down there. That's not an issue, but, we have to bypass a lot of things if there's a crash or something that we need to do to assist the motorist. So we, this past year, we've doubled our operations on those routes and increased to 19 routes across the state. Next slide. So currently, we're in the another phase of expansion. We've added another corridor along Interstate 20, and even though that was only about a 40-mile route, there was a 3-year construction project that went in with barrier-separated contraflow on an interstate with high truck traffic volumes. I think the first couple weeks that was up and running, they had 8 deadly crashes. I think they had 4 fatalities and multiple crashes in that area. So we've expanded in that region also. In addition, we've had to add the number of dispatchers in those 2 areas, 95 and I-75, to keep up with the volume. So we're tracking, how many calls we get, coordinating with 911. The one thing that they did with this program from a dispatch standpoint is we got 911 to start calling that center instead of calling maintenance foremen who used to go out to these crashes. So from a coordination standpoint, now we're actually able to keep up with the volume of work that's going on out there. How many calls are going out. Maintenance foremen aren't going out with nobody knowing about it. Same thing with our champ operators. It's a more coordinated setup. So I just wanted to bring that up. That has been a huge plus, adding the service patrol and the dispatch centers together. Next slide. So we rolled this schedule out in about 4 months. Basically, we had about 3 weeks per district that we did training. Sounds pretty short, but again, we're talking rural Georgia. Most of this was traffic control and safety the first couple weeks in response to incidents. After that, we really got in there and did a lot of field ride-alongs with these guys and worked on maintenance operations and coordinations with other response agencies. Next slide. The public outreach was huge on this one. We met with them. We had a kickoff meeting and then basically went straight to the public information office. When you're looking to expand these types of programs, you've got to bring in your PIOs immediately. They've got contacts with city and county governments. We also got with Georgia Emergency Management because they had all the outreach and partnerships already with the response community. So those were the first 2 groups that we've met with. We've also stood up about 15 traffic incident management teams and are continually pushing to add those across the state. Next slide. So what are the benefits of this? Right out of the gate, motorist assist, the first year of operations, we did about 122,000 stops for service. About 40% of that, or about 50,000 of those stops were motorist assistance across the state. And again, we're talking rural Georgia. So it's a huge benefit to the traveling public because, looking at that second to the bottom picture, the traveling public, when they get stuck out here, they can't walk a mile to the next interchange, or there's not people that are going to stop and assist them. They may have to walk 6-7 miles to get to the next interchange to get some help. So that's obviously a big safety concern. So we're providing basically tire changes, small amounts of fuel to get you to the next interchange, battery jumps, water, tow coordination. And again, we do the motorist assistance from 6 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. around 365 days a year. Next slide. Next slide. Sorry. In addition to that, we'll do traffic incident management. So our primary focus, obviously, is lane blocking incidents. We've got push bumpers, tow straps, chains, J-hooks, logging chains. If we can push or pull something out of the roadway, be it debris, be it crashes, whatever it is, we'll go ahead and do that. We've coordinated with local law enforcement and highway patrol to work out quick clearance across the state. If we cannot clear it for whatever reason, then we'll provide temporary traffic control. If it's going to be a longer term and the traffic is going to back up to where they can't see that scene, then we'll disconnect, let the fire or law enforcement block at the scene, and then we'll become advance warning. We have a full dynamic message sign on our trucks, so we're able to flag that. Plus, we'll coordinate through 511 to get the system in Waze, the Georgia 511 app and internet system, and other things. We're on call after hours, so this is another component I'll talk about quickly with maintenance. We have what's called 4 up, 4 down. So the guys that end their shift at 10:30 will run until about 2 a.m., and then the guys coming in the next morning at 6 a.m. Know that they may get calls for service as early as 2 a.m. to come and transition over or take over incidents. Next slide. The other thing that really helped justify this program, most of the maintenance operators, maintenance foremen, basically if you call them from 8 to 5, or in the summer months they only work 4 10-hour days, if you call them when they're working, they basically had to shut down their whole operations, pick up their traffic control, drive to an incident scene out on the interstate, make whatever assessment. Sometimes it wasn't even anything they needed to respond to, and by the time they could get back to the service, the day was shot. After hours, they've already worked their full day. They're having to respond, pick equipment up, and then respond to the scene. So we've taken over a lot of the maintenance duties on the interstates. We obviously removed debris and crash. About 40% of what we're doing out there is also just picking up debris. A lot of tires, ladders, paint cans, those types of issues out on the roadway. So we're constantly picking those up. Before the storm is a good example. We went out and cleared any drainage, assessed anything that was blocked so that we didn't get any backup on the roadway. In fall, with all the leaves falling down, that's another time when you get a lot of drainage issues. So our guys are constantly stopping and looking at those types of issues to make sure they're proactive in cleaning these before they become an issue. Again, responding in lieu of a Georgia DOT foreman and being his eyes and ears on that scene so that he knows if he's got to come or not. If it's temporary traffic control, we'll handle it. If it's long-term, we can coordinate and get them out there quickly. And then, obviously, working with the other responders and keeping them safe. Next slide. Another big component of this is the way that this project was set up. It's on an hourly basis, so the more that we can do per hour, the better it is for everybody. We've actually began replacing cable posts where only 5 or less of the posts are knocked down. We started carrying chainsaws this past year, which has helped us out with snow and ice response and in response to Florence and Hurricane Michael. We're actually tagging and removing abandoned vehicles. So, like I said, during the hurricane response, with all the traffic moving out of other states, we're tagging, especially 2 days in advance of storms, and law enforcement is using that as the start time and tagging and clearing any evacuation route or any interstate before you have onset of storms, inclement weather, or special planned events. So we've just started doing that this year. We're also kind of helping GDOT out with contractor oversight, following behind mowers and seeing if they're knocking signs down and holding them responsible and things like that. Tagging guardrail, other coordination efforts. Next slide. So I wanted to get in real quick to some other things that are interesting about this program. There is no such thing as scope creep. I mentioned earlier it's an hourly based contract. The champ operators are per hour. The dispatchers are per hour. And then project management, oversight, training, our contract and safety managers, supervisors for operators and dispatch, the outreach, the traffic incident management teams, doing research for expansion, performance measures, and things like that are all inclusive in those operator and dispatchers' hourly rates. So when GDOT came back and said, hey, can you guys carry chainsaws? The answer was yes. There was no discussion about cost. When they asked us if we could, help repair guardrail or put delineators back on posts and things like that, we're glad to do it. We're stopping about 14,000 stops per month now. A lot of those are maintenance type response. So that's just keeping the maintenance department more focused and more efficient, which was a big justification for this program. Next slide. So as far as the funding, basically House Bill 170 back in the 2015-2016 legislative session, they changed their gas tax, brought a lot more revenue into the Department of Transportation, but it also had some guidelines on what the focus was. Basic highway maintenance, they had fallen behind on a lot of the repairs out there on the roadway, expand roads and infrastructure, and then ease traffic congestion. Well, the first two, the first and third bullet are obviously things that the CHAMP program was included in with that funding. In addition, the DOT, I think just like Alabama stated, they're fighting for positions. So being able to contract this out means that they can keep more of their maintenance forces and other staff in place, but expand this program quickly and efficiently. Next slide. So urban versus rural safety. So obviously just looking at the picture on the left, that's what HERO targets. The one on the right is what we've got. So you can see the volume of traffic, it's less dense, but it moves at a higher rate of pace for the majority of the day. At night, third shift for HERO is very similar to our routes, but again, they've got a lot more lanes to navigate in. Next slide. So some of the big issues that we're seeing out there, urban is high societal cost, a lot of congestion, but with that congestion, there's an expectation. When I drove into Atlanta this morning, once I hit a certain area, the metro area, my foot was moving back and forth between the gas and the brake. When you're talking about rural Georgia, there's limited resources. You don't have a lot of responders that can come out. There's a lot of safety concerns. It's high speed. There's no expectation from the traveling public or the commercial vehicles traffic out there. There's no expectation to be moving that foot over to that brake. Typically, you put your vehicle on cruise control and you turn your brain off and you wait until you get to either an urban area or to your destination. Response times are usually pretty rough. DOT's average response time was probably 2+ hours in rural Georgia, where the HERO unit is out there literally within minutes. Sometimes they were the first responder to the scene. So this program does address that. We get out there a lot quicker because we're already on the interstate, and we take our trucks home at night. So we do have a quick response time to the interstates even after hours. The other big issue you've got is where do you move traffic on rural interstates, and especially your commercial vehicles. There's limited resources for them to go. In some cases, they'll just pull off at the next exit and block an off or on-ramp and go to sleep and wait until the incident clears, which is just causing more and more congestion issues on top of what you're already dealing with. Next slide. So the how-to guide, the real quick, down and dirty. Run the numbers. Look at your statewide crash reports. I actually wrote down that equation. I think we may actually use that equation, and I appreciate sharing that because that may help us look at the crashes and the motorist assist and balance our routes a little better, find the start and stop point. So instead of ranking your routes, you actually lengthen or shorten your route so that that greater than number of 4, if it's 10 here and 20 there, we may try to get a blend of 15 on both of them. Look at law enforcement and their motorist assist. If you don't have this program, your law enforcement is keeping records of how many times they're doing motorist assist out there. That's a double justification. It helps congestion if we're doing it, and it helps them because they're doing more enforcement activities and less roadway motorist assist. So it balances that work and takes it out of their arena. It should help your safety. It should drag down your crashes and fatalities because they're focused more on what they're better at. Maintenance response request. How many times is your maintenance department's getting called out at night? I think the first step to that is to get all of the 911 calls recorded somehow, not going directly to the maintenance foreman, but going to some kind of central dispatch so you can actually see what kind of volume you're getting for those guys. And then obviously debris, crashes, signal calls, infrastructure damage, all the things that could be quickly identified and responded to by a program like this. The other big thing I'll say is get your traffic department and your maintenance folks to work together to look at this thing. What can benefit maintenance and kind of balance, use their funds to kind of balance and get this type of program started. Because like Aldot said, it's not going to be CMAQ funds for the most part. Talk to Georgia DOT. Jason Josie's on the call here. I'll give you GDOT's contact for the project manager at the end, but get some of their lessons learned. We've been running this program for 2 years now, and the feedback has been very positive of it. So we haven't really heard anybody have any complaints to speak of. Next slide. So lessons learned out in rural Georgia, and I imagine most other states are pretty consistent. Your assists are going to be pretty standard across the days of the week. When you're talking the rural parts of the interstate, it's not really commuter traffic as much as it is commerce traffic. So 7 days a week, we're seeing pretty average response from our operators. Next slide. The assist and debris benefit is huge. So if you're trying to cut down on a lot of, if you want to be proactive, getting those motorists off those shoulders to a safe refuge or back safely into the flow of traffic and keeping the debris issues out of the roadway is a big deal. Also from a PR perspective, your roadways are just going to look that much better. It also keeps law enforcement free to enforce laws and keeps the DOT, especially the maintenance forces, much more efficient, and your guardrail contractors and people putting signs back up, it keeps them moving a lot more efficiently to get their jobs done quicker. Next slide. Finally, you're talking rural operations, so you're kind of sticking your neck out there because you don't have the same benefits that have been established through the urban. Start small and justify your growth as you go. The big thing that I'll say is these hourly rates from us being a contractor consultant and from GDOT side, it's a benefit to both of us because instead of constantly having to go back and haggle on things, once the contract is set and you've got your rates in place, it's pretty easy to make changes in what you're doing and add services. Basically, when they do a route ad, I'm just expanding the number of hours that I do in a month. So if we can justify it with the budget and the operational issues, it's pretty easy to move forward. Next slide. So finally, lessons learned. We hear a lot of talk about connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles and all of these things, but as the future goes, debris is still going to occur on the roadway. No autonomous or connected vehicle is going to fix that. Vehicles will still break down. They talked about Teslas and how they were going to, be so great, and now we see them littered all over the junkyards. Crashes will still occur. You can say what you want, but anytime there's debris in the roadway and it's not immediately detected or a crash occurs, there's always a chance for a secondary crash. The maintenance functions will always be there. The road is always going to deteriorate. Things are always going to happen out there that need to be responded to. And then the big picture is remember your responders. Remember that when you start a program like this, you are part of the response community. You need to look at how the other responders will respond to this type of a program, how you're communicating with the motorists, and how you can make everybody's job safer. So, next slide. So this is my contact information along with Chad Hendon, who's the manager of TMC operations, but he also manages this contract as the PM. So any information I can provide to you on this, feel free to hit me up. Sam, back to you, or John.
All right, thanks a bunch, Brian. Really appreciate it. Hey, we're getting near the end of our time here, but there was one question about dealing with animal carcasses. Is there anything specific you guys do, especially with Champ, with dealing with dead animals?
Yeah, we basically drag them out of the road. If they're small enough, we'll glove up and take them out by hand. If it's a larger animal, we'll strap to it and drag it out of the roadway. And then Georgia DOT has either maintenance forces or they've got debris contracts in place that can come and pick up the carcass.
All right. Thanks a bunch. Some really good presentations today on the planning and the process to get it, and then one presentation on actually moving forward and doing it. So that's great. Well, I'll throw it back over to Liz for the poll, and again, reminder for everybody. This is for us in the group. So if you guys have things you want talked about, in the next session, put it up there. Vote on what's up there, and if you got a suggestion or something you want to present on, put it in there too. Look forward to hearing what people have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thanks to all our presenters today. We did want to go ahead and open up the poll to you all for our next topic. You should be able to see what the options are. There are a few different options: organizational rank and structure. That's taking a deeper dive into how your safety service patrols are set up within your Department of Transportation or Toll Road Authority or other agency that's operating safety service patrols. The next topic under consideration is contracting with third-party operators. There are a few different business models out there for safety service patrols, one of which is, of course, to have FTEs employed by the Department of Transportation or Toll Road Authority who's operating the patrol. But another option is to contract out with a third-party operator. And increasingly, we are seeing a trend where more and more DOTs are contracting those services out, still maintaining oversight over the services, but working with a third-party operator to provide the vehicles and the employees. The next option is really taking a closer look at terminology and classification of patrol services. We heard it a little bit today with Brian's presentation just now with the CHAMP program, that there are different services offered by these patrols, and while we use the general term safety service patrol, there has been a lot of discussion around what the appropriate term is for these programs. Should it be freeway service patrols, safety service patrols, or is there something else? Of course, in Georgia we have HERO, in New York we have HELP. There's many different terms that are used in ways to classify patrol services, so we could take a closer look at that. The next option would be funding models. That's actually one that we haven't pursued yet. We heard from Sal today about FHWA funding. We heard from Alabama about CMAQ funding. So looking at those different options of where can you get funds to support patrols and patrol expansions. And then, of course, we have the other option. We do want to hear from you all about what topics you would like us to explore. If you have ideas, please put them in the chat window. It can be a topic that we've already explored. We just need to hear from you what's relevant and what is important for you to hear more about and to hear from different presenters. And of course, as always, we are eager to hear from you if you're interested in presenting on a certain topic. Each quarter, we do work with different presenters, and we are hoping to provide you with a nice variety of presenters from different states and different programs and different operations. So if you are interested in presenting, please do reach out to us. I appreciate everyone who has already voted on here, and we will send out a survey as well at the end of this session, and we're just looking for your feedback on how this session went, and again on the topics you'd like us to pursue in the future, and if you're interested in presenting. So thank you all for your time. I'll turn it over to Sam for any final words.
Liz, I have a hunch this safety service patrol idea just might catch on here. We work with a lot of different states, and I'm hearing a lot about tweaking of the patrols, expansion. There's several states that are looking to add patrols that don't have a patrol, start them up. So we're just thrilled to be part of all that. As Brett said in his discussion, safehighways.org is a good resource if you're looking to expand your patrol, tweak it, start a new one. You'll find a lot of contacts and information there. I heard today a lot of different types of formulas, similar but looking at some similar factors, but different ways to do it. I think the idea of just having a formula as your base, something that consistently it allows you to compare different areas, and I've also heard that it helps in funding justification to be able to say, we ran this model and it shows we need this here. Some of the heat maps that Sal showed, all that stuff to me makes great sense when you've got to reach up the ladder and get the funding for what is needed out there. I was also impressed to hear the ideas about rural patrols. I think we've seen the major highways be where these patrols are, but two of our presenters, Sal and Brian, today talked about SSPs on rural roads, so that made a lot of sense to me. Higher traffic there, or maybe longer response times getting to people, so that could be something a lot of states are going to start looking at if you haven't already. Does anyone out there, anyone on the call, have anything to add to this topic? I know we're at 3 o'clock here, but if somebody has something you're doing in your state expansion-wise that maybe wasn't brought up and you think others would benefit from that, is there anybody that's got anything like that? You can just press *# now and speak up if you have something you want to add. I do want to thank John and Jason, played a role in pulling this all together. Great job today, John. All of our presenters, of course, they gave up their time, many, as I mentioned, in the path of a hurricane here, so thank you guys so much for that. And of course, Nilo, we're happy to be part of NOCO, and couldn't do this, Liz, without you and your team. So thank you all. We'll be taking a little bit of a hiatus here for the holidays here in November and December, but we'll come back early next year with another call or webinar. It seems like we're doing well with attendance and participation and presenters. So I want to thank the community for that. We enjoy this interaction and just learning from one another. So thank you all. Stay safe out there, and have a great holiday season, and we'll talk with you next year. Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.